Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, and today I want to follow up on the video that I posted the other day about training volume and how I've been increasing to a level that I've never trained at before in my life, even when I was a young whippersnapper. In the real world that I inhabit, the amount of time that I dedicate to physical activity is often questioned. Is it good for my health? Why do I do it? What pushes me? What am I running away from? So I thought I would talk a bit more about that. Like, why am I doing this? And is it actually good for me, good for you, good for anybody? One of the first questions that I ask people when they come to me for help is, why do you have the goal or goals that you do? Whose goals are they? If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I use the word identity quite often. And not everybody knows what I'm talking about when I use that term. So we have many different regions or networks in our brain that do different things. And some of them manage our social standing because we are pack animals, essentially. We're social creatures. We don't do well alone. We're built to survive in groups. So there's a network in our brain that manages our social status to make sure that we are continually accepted by the group. Because if we get kicked out of the group, our brain thinks we're going to die, or at least have a very short and brutal life. So our brains are built to make sure that we fit into the group somehow, that we're accepted by the group. So those of us who, for whatever reason, in early childhood or genetics or a combination, got a low-ranking identity, our brains are going to spend a heck of a lot of time and energy coming up with all kinds of schemes and plans to improve or maintain our rank so that we don't fall off the bottom of the group. Those people at the top, they're also trying to protect their rank at the top. So they have an identity engine in the brain that sets goals that help them retain that position. And then there are people that feel secure in the group and their rank doesn't really feel challenged. They don't want to be at the top. They're not worried about falling off the bottom. So their identity network is not that active. It's not that loud. It doesn't really bug them much. And they tend to set goals that are much more about curiosity and interest than about what most people might call an ego goal, which unfortunately that has a negative connotation, but it's perfectly natural to have what one would call an ego goal, a goal about improving your status if you have a brain and an identity that's baked in a low-rank position. It believes that your value in the group is not necessarily obvious, and therefore you're always trying to compensate or show off, or what I like to call it, show up, so that the group says, oh, you, yeah, I forgot about you. Yeah, we do need you. Yeah, you are important. So for somebody of low rank, many of the goals that are set are about showing up. But those people that are secure, or they might be threatened by how you show up, they'll perceive you as showing off, because what you're doing might make their identity look bad or inferior, and now they've got work to do. Uh-oh, Tim is over there training 20 hours a week, and that's making me look bad. So now I've either got to make him look bad so that I don't have to do it, or I've got to start training so that the group sees me as special as well. So our brains engage in all kinds of tactics to try to feel safe within the group. So to bring this back around, if you can recognize that you have an identity that feels insecure in the social world, your goals are going to be about raising your rank, improving your status. Now, the thing about identities, they're concepts. They don't represent who you are as a total being. They don't represent your body. They don't represent what you're capable of. They represent what milieu you were baked in. So whatever genetics combined with early childhood experiences, parenting style, attachment style, how your peers responded to you when you were young, whatever that was like, that combination of variables basically shaped your identity for the most part. It gets some fine tuning as you go through teenage years and early adulthood, but it's largely set in place. And it's based on that early data. So you're going to have a self-concept or self-model that may not in any way, shape, or form represent who you are now and what you're capable of and how you're perceived by others. But it's not as if you can just make this network in your brain disappear. It's a physical thing. Just like the network of blood vessels in my body exist and they can't go away because I imagine them disappearing, I can't imagine the network of neurons in my brain that continually manage and create this identity concept. I can't just wish them away. I can't think them away. I've had so many people say to me, dude, don't take yourself so seriously. Just relax. Be yourself. And what they don't realize is that is my self referring to identity. Like, don't take your identity so seriously. Well, how do I not do that? How do I not have this neural network in my head? This is not a thought that I'm choosing to engage in. It's how my brain is framing the world for me to move into. We don't all see the same world. Some people look outside, they see threat. Other people look outside, they see opportunity. Some people look outside, they see sunshine. Other people look outside, they see weeds that need to be pulled. So our attention is always focused within the lens of what is important to our identity, to our concept of self. So going back to the earlier question, why do you have this goal? Whose goal is it? Is it your identity, which is based on what happened to you when you were very young? So you're trying to overcome some social obstacle that no longer exists? Or is it based on who you can be outside of identity? Because we still have all of our mental and cognitive faculties outside of identity. I can still be an observer. I can still engage in all kinds of cognitive tasks. I still have memories, but they don't have to be linked to the identity network. I can engage in much of my thinking and processing of myself and the world without needing to load my identity. For instance, I can go for a run, or I can go for a run that's part of a plan that my identity has to do well at a particular race on a particular date. So there's a character in a story, and what I'm doing now is part of the story. So inside of that identity context, there can be disappointment, there can be frustration, there can be expectations that are not met, or there can be cause for celebration and these extraordinary moments of victory. But those moments are few and far between, and what you're most likely going to get is the disappointment, frustration, and unmet expectations. Why? Because the person, the identity who has the goal, is measuring itself based on what you were capable of doing when you were young. So your concept is outdated. It no longer reflects your current capabilities. Which brings me back to the initial question in this video. Why do I train so much? What am I running away from? Well, if my identity was driving this training, if I had a plan and if I had a goal that I had to meet, then this level of training would be concerning because it's a lot, especially for someone my age, but even someone in their early 20s, this is a lot of training. But because I'm engaged in this training process outside of my identity, so I don't have any expectations, and I'm not going to be disappointed because I don't have expectations. I'm not going to be frustrated because I'm delayed due to injury, or I'm delayed because of a flat tire on my roller skis that takes a week to fix because I'm waiting for tubes to come in, like I am right now. If I don't have an identity that needs this to happen in a certain way at a certain time, then there's just things to explore. Okay, well, what can I do while I'm waiting for those tubes to come in? And just like the June 5th mile championships, which were canceled, by the way, but I decided not to go before they were canceled. Okay, I'm just not doing that, and because there's no identity involved, there's no disappointment. There's no, man, I wish I could have done it. What a bummer. There's just what's next. So if you can get present to why you have this particular goal and who it is that set the goal, which part of you, identity, or simply I'm curious about what's possible, and you get to see when do you benefit from setting the goal. For instance, if I imagine myself running a 100-mile race and it feels really, really good to imagine that, and I tell everybody about it, well, then I get to benefit from the goal right now. I don't have to do the training to benefit. I don't have to complete the race to benefit. I've got this race on my calendar, and now suddenly I'm an ultramarathoner, and I'm walking around the workplace, and everybody knows, yeah, he's going to run an ultramarathon. And it feels great. And then I go out and I buy the gear, and I go on a run, and I've got all this fancy new gear and these new shoes with super cushioning. And yeah, I'm an ultramarathoner. I'm a 100-miler, but you haven't run it yet. But you're already borrowing from that goal to feel good now. So was the goal simply to feel good about yourself now? Was the goal to actually complete it and then feel good about yourself? Or is the goal simply to see what's possible in any given moment? So even though I am training a lot, I'm tuned into my body. I'm not tuned into the goal and what I need to happen and when I need it to happen, and I'm not trying to improve my rank. My resume doesn't need an upgrade. It's already stupid as it is. So I'm not training to try to prove anything. That's not entirely true. My identity isn't trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to improve my status. But what I'm trying to demonstrate, perhaps that's a better word, is that you don't need a plan and you don't need motivation or discipline. You simply need to be curious and allow yourself to move. So if movement feels good, movement happens. And once I'm moving, okay, how long does the movement feel good? Is there any part of my body that doesn't feel good? How am I sleeping? How am I waking up? How much food am I eating? How do I feel after eating? Do I have to eat all day long to make up for the calories burned? And does the feeling I have in my gut really kind of sink the rest of the day because I'm always trying to catch up to energy expenditure? Like, there's a lot of things to tune into. And this is something that I've talked to a lot of athletes about, those especially Nordic skiers who put in enormous amounts of training volume and what their lives are like. And many of them retire at a pretty young age because after a while they just can't take it anymore. But there's often that goal that they have. Like, there's a documentary out called The Weight of Gold. And it's about Olympic athletes who were going for the 2020 Olympics, but they were canceled. So now what? I put all my eggs in the 2020 Olympic basket, but now there is no 2020 Olympics. What do I do? Who am I without that event? How do I define myself? How do I afford this lifestyle? So there's been a lot of depression. There's been a lot of mental illness, a lot of real serious challenges with athletes because the Olympics were canceled. So you can say, yeah, but they were only pushed back a year. But if you've ever trained at the level that an Olympic athlete has to train at and had to make sure all your sponsors were satisfied and your coaches were satisfied, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through in order to maintain that level of commitment. And then suddenly it's pulled out from under you. Or maybe you're 38 years old and you were right on the edge as far as your identity was concerned. Like, this is it, I'm going to retire. But now it's a year later, now you're 39. What are you going to do? So in that context, this type of training, this type of lifestyle could be really exhausting and devastating and have a negative impact. But right now for me, I feel great. I'm improving. And to be improving at the age of 53 is exciting. Not because I have an identity that is, again, trying to prove something, but because I'm really curious about the human condition. I'm really curious about what a body can do, because we're told that performance drops off precipitously starting in your late 30s, declines pretty fast in your 40s, and then when you get into your 50s, it drops off a cliff. So this is kind of the common perception. But what if that's not the case? I want to find out. Not because I have anything to prove, but because I'm really curious. What can I do? How much can I do in a healthy way that still allows me to have a life where I'm not constantly worried about maintaining my training? Because I'm tuned in. Because I keep checking, okay, how are my ankles doing? How are my knees doing? How are my hips doing? How's my lower back? How's my immune system? Am I getting sick? And the answer to that is, I haven't been sick in a long time. Big part of that is because I'm washing my hands and sanitizing them constantly, and I wear a mask when I'm out in a store, not outside, but inside. So it's really nice to do this kind of volume and notice that, oh, my immune system is not buried or compromised, and that the precautions I have been taking have been helping me as an athlete as well. So what am I running from? Nothing. Am I using training as an escape? No. Do I use training to increase the amount of my brain that's available to me? Yes, I do. But that's not an escape. But here's the thing, if we back up for a moment, goals and identities don't just apply to athletics, they apply to everything. So if you have an identity narrative that you are fully committed to, that your friends and family are fully committed to, that your workplace is fully committed to, and you can't keep it up or manage it, and it's going to start burying you, well, you're going to go into a depression, which is where identity gets defeated. And your brain says, we're pulling that identity out of the game. We're going to make some modifications. We're going to keep ruminating and ruminating until we figure out what needs to be fixed. And then either we're going to create a new version of that identity, or we're simply going to allow you to exist outside of identity for a while to explore really gently and then get back into the game. Unfortunately, if everybody, including ourselves, is committed to that particular identity the way that it was, you're going to have a pretty tough time showing up with a modified identity or outside of identity. Where's the Tim that I used to know? I don't recognize you. Who are you? What'd you do with Tim? Well, he wasn't working. So I went back to the lab, made some improvements, made some adjustments, and yeah, this works a lot better. I like this. So am I escaping from a story? Why am I in the story to begin with? Why am I trapped inside of that identity construct, which was formed when I was a child? So that's an important question to ask. So yeah, that is a good thing to escape from, because that identity concept is not interested in your well-being, at least not in the sense of well-being that we might call thriving. It's interested in your well-being as in, I am surviving another day because the group has not yet gotten rid of me. The group still sees some value in me, so therefore I'm alive. And that's well-being enough. So our brains are built to survive, not thrive. At least those of us that grew up rather compromised and we have insecure identities. The best our identities hope for is survival. Thrival, I guess that's a word, is somewhat of an alien concept to an insecure identity. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments below. And yeah, this is an important topic to discuss. So I'd love to get into a conversation and address some of your comments in an upcoming video. All right, if you haven't yet subscribed, please do, and I will see you soon.